significantly last night. And it's about 33 degrees outside right now, and it's about 8 o'clock in the morning. And inside this house, there's no gas hooked up right now, so there's no heat. So we're just using little space heaters to try to stay warm in here. And right now, the temperature in the house is about 51 degrees. So if you're wondering why Amanda's not here, there's your answer. This whole bathroom is really, really dark right now. There was no overhead light either in the room or in this shower. There was electrical already here for the light, but it was just capped off. They had never hooked it up before. When we first purchased the house, the ceiling was a little bit lower. It actually came to just above this doorway. So we tore that out and raised it all the way up to the roof trusses that were here, so that you would have higher height in the shower, so it wouldn't feel quite so claustrophobic. I just need to measure this off to see how big this piece of backer board will be. I'm going to be installing a LED light in the dead center of the ceiling that we're putting in the shower. And since I already know where it's going, I'm going to go ahead and measure and cut the hole in this backer board before I put it up. You can cut your hole for your light after you've already installed it in the ceiling, but it's way easier to do now when it's easy to reach and you're not working above your head, plus you don't have to worry about getting dust in your eyes. We've chosen some really cool mosaic tiles we're going to be hanging on the ceiling up here. Before I got started, I thought I'd give you a quick tip about putting in mosaics. These are the ones we're actually going to hang on the ceiling in here. They're kind of similar to the ones we put on the shower in the other bathroom. If you've never done tile before, you may have thought that each one of these individual pieces were separate and you had to hang them separately. They're actually attached to this mesh background, which makes them a little easier to put in. And it's pretty straightforward putting these on the wall or the ceiling. What you could do on something like this is just place them on the ceiling or wall and use this straight edge here, or just butt these points up on each one of these to the wall. But then you'd have to go back and cut all those individual tiny pieces to fit in the gaps that these are leaving out. And you can do that. To me, it's way easier in the beginning just to have a straight line drawn on the tile that you're going to use as your reference point on each one of these that are going to go against the edge, and go ahead and cut it all at once. And it will seem like you're wasting a little more tile to do this, because you wouldn't have to cut any if you just placed against the wall and then use some scraps at the very end to fill in your gaps around the edge. But to me, wasting the time of cutting all those tiny little pieces is far more expensive to me than throwing away a little extra tile on these, because they're not super expensive and you're not doing a very large area. I mean, we're only using like 10 tiles to do this whole ceiling. So if I have to throw away just a little bit on each one of these, I'd rather do that than wasting all the time cutting all those tiny little pieces around the edges. Not to mention, I feel like I get a lot straighter line if I cut this all at once. It's hard to explain without actually showing you when I'm doing it, but if you're to cut each one of these tiny little pieces on the wet saw, there'll be a slight variation from piece to piece on how straight they are. But if you cut it all at once, you've drawn your straight line on the tile and you cut down that, it looks way better to me. See, we've got a good starter piece for our corner now, and we don't have to cut all those individual spots one at a time. Just 2 straight cuts and it's done. I'm sorry for the spooky lighting scheme in here. Just don't have any overhead light or any light at all in this bathroom yet. Like I was showing you before, we're gonna put one in the ceiling right there, but I don't want to put it in until I have the tile in. So the only light in this whole bathroom is this giant work light and just my DeWalt flashlight sitting over here. So that's all I have to see in here, right? It's kind of creating this horror movie vibe. If you're ever in a horror movie situation and the only thing you have to protect yourself is tiling tools, I highly recommend the trowel that we're using today, the 3/16 V-notch trowel. It's the weapon of choice when the only thing available is tiling tools. I would recommend mixing your thin set a little bit thicker so it's not so runny when you're doing this. Not because it helps the towel hold any better, but it just keeps it from dripping on you the whole time you're doing it. Like that. I've had a lot of people ask me, what's the secret to putting tiles on the ceiling without them falling on you while you're doing it? It's witchcraft. With the straight cuts on these Mosaic tiles, I do feel like it is easier to cut them all as one sheet like I was showing you before. When you get to a spot like something like this where you have to cut an odd shape out, I think it's easier, at least for me, to take them apart. Just get as much up there as you can where it's not going to touch the opening, and then the parts you're going to have to cut, just take those off and cut them as individuals. Since the individual tiles are small, they're a little easier to manipulate on the wet saw and cut them than it is holding a big sheet all at one time. So I guess my rule of thumb is straight cuts, keep them as one sheet, round cuts, take them apart. But do whatever works best for you. I'm also kind of marking where these are going on the ceiling so I don't apply more thin set than what I'm going to be putting up right now. Because if I put them where the cut tiles are going to be, that thin set may dry before I actually get those tiles cut and put them up here. Because I mix this stuff really, really dry so it would stick better. And plus with those individual tiles, it may be easier just to back butter them and stick them up there. Not a fan of that. That's the bulk of that finish. I just gotta cut in around the light. You can see I've just got these little pieces right here that I'm gonna have to measure and cut. And I'm just gonna do those individually instead of try to do them all out of one sheet. To make this easier so I could cut all these at one time to keep from having to go back and forth to the wet saw, I labeled on the ceiling 1 through 9 where each piece will go, and I wrote the corresponding number on the back of each piece so I don't get them mixed up after I cut them. decided to hold off on grouting the ceiling for right now because the niches we're doing in here is going to have the same color grout. So I'm just going to wait and do that all at once. I don't have to mix up that grout 2 different times. But I am going to go ahead and temporarily put the light fixture on top of this shower because it's so dark in here. I'd like to be able to see when I'm doing the rest of this. I know this should go without saying, but just in case you've never done any electrical before, be sure that you kill the power at the electrical panel for whatever area you're going to be working on. And it's a good idea, if you're not for certain that it killed the power, just because it killed the power in the room, it might not have killed the power to the outlet or the switch that you're working on. So before you actually touch it with your bare hands, it's a good idea to use one of these voltage detectors. You can pick these up anywhere. I actually got this one from Harbor Freight. They're super cheap. It just lets you know if the line is still live or not. They make tons of styles of these can lights. But the one we're using in here is this low profile one. And it doesn't actually have to have a can. It mounts directly to the ceiling with these clips. As you push it in there, they clamp down onto the ceiling above it and hold the light in place. Be sure, whichever one you pick though, if you're putting it in a shower, that it's wet rated. The light that we chose actually has a selector on here that goes up above in the ceiling, but you can pick what color you want the light to be. Not so much color as in the color of the rainbow, but as if you want it to be a cool light or daylight or warm light, that kind of color. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back on and check to see which one I like best before I stick this up here. Amanda just got here, so I'm gonna let her pick. This is the light that's going in the shower, and it changes color. What color do you want it to be? That's one. That's one. 3, 4, 5. That's it.
I want to get a rainbow.
No.
No rainbows.
1,
I kind of like that one.
2, 3, 4, 5.
I guess 1. Go back to 1. Kind of blue. Yeah, I like that one the best.
It'd make it easier to see all your bits and giblets when you're showering.
Why does it turn colors?
It gives you a choice of what color you want it to be. But you can only choose once because you have to put this in the ceiling. So you have to make up your mind before you install it.
It's that one. I don't know. I can
3.
tell now because it's looking at.
Take your sunglasses off too, it'd probably help you.
Oh. Oh, it is different.
Idiot. That's 1.
I like 1 best.
2. Or 1.
1. We're not at the eye doctor.
Oh.
Don't film me. I'm in my pajamas.
Somebody didn't show up ready to work.
It's so cold. Couldn't get out of my clothes. I'm freezing to death. I want to stay home.
Imagine that.